Hey, what's up, comrades? Hope everyone's doing great. We're here to talk about the X-Men. Well, we're here to talk about the New Mutants. What were they doing while the whole Secret Wars thing was going on? Well, they were fighting with the Hellions. Who are the Hellions? We'll get to that in a minute. So we start off New Mutants issue number 15 with a giant Garfield stuffy in Ileana's room. She's meditating, thinking about stuff. She's worried about Kitty and worried about the professor not being around, and worried about the X-Men not being around, but she's mostly worried about Kitty. So she concentrates on creating an astral projection. She heads up to Boston, and there she finds the White Queen and Kitty Pryde arguing. The White Queen is trying to, that's Emma Frost, is trying to convince Kitty to join her side, and it's assailing her with like her mental powers and whatnot. They're going back and forth. She shows Kitty that Doug Ramsey is thinking about hooking up with her. Obviously, we all knew that was what he was thinking about. And then at some point, they go back and forth, and then Emma Frost senses Ileana there watching them. Well, first Kitty like looks up and kind of notices something, and then Emma Frost is like, what's that up there? And then she blasts Ileana. Ileana gets like slammed back over to the X Mansion, and because she got, psychically attacked, she like freaks out. And then we get the rest of the crew. We get Daniel, Moonstar, Rain, Sinclair, Sam Gunther, Robert Costa, and Amara Aquila. Aquila, they're all running into a room, and they see a giant monster, and it's like, oh no, there's a whole bunch of monsters, and they find Ileana just like kneeling with like her head back, and all these crazy monsters flying out of them. So they all start going to try to take care of that. They're fighting these like crazy monsters, getting thrown around, whatnot, getting blasted. Danny Moonstar finally uses her like ability on a bunch of these like monsters that Ileana's essentially summoning, and they see the what do they call it? The dark demon form of Ileana like screaming at them right now, which causes Ileana to kind of pass out. But it also brings Ileana like forward as like her monstrous self, her demon self. So we see her with all her like red skin and whatnot. And then Daniel Moonstar is like kind of watching this, but she's kind of losing her mind. And then she like wakes up in bed, and Ileana's there, and all the rest of the kids are there, and they have a little chit chat about what's going on. And Ileana informs them about what is happening up at the Hellions, not with the Hellions, I don't know about the Hellions yet, but up at the Boston Academy or whatnot. And so they're like, well, there's no X-Men here, so we were told to contact Fantastic Four. They're not around. They contact the Avengers. They're not around. Obviously, we know everybody's involved in Secret Wars. So Elena's like, I'm going. If you guys want to come, then whatever. And then Amara's like, we should go. And everyone else is like, all right, fine, let's go. So then Robert Acosta uses his vast wealth, which, has been cut off. So it's just like they gather money from like cushions or whatever, and eventually they get enough money to buy tickets to head up to Boston. And so they take a trip up there, and they're talking about different stuff. They talk about Cloak and Dagger, who are also mutants that are not involved with the X-Men really. They're like their own thing. And they're just like chit-chatting on the plane, and like people are flirting with each other and having teenage angst and whatnot, and yada yada yada. They finally get to the Massachusetts Academy, and we see that it just looks like normal. Kids are walking around, going to school and whatnot. And then we go inside, and Amara's like burning her way up through the bottom, and everyone's dressed in their cute little like X-Men costumes or whatever, including Ileana, who's using one of Kitty's. And then they track down, based on Ileana's like when she was here before in her astral form, they track down what Kitty should be, and then they run up, and Ileana's like, Kitty, and then she grabs her, but it's an illusion. And then standing there being all giant and stuff is Emma Frost, and Kitty Pryde looking like torn up. And she's like, aha, you have fallen for my trick. And that takes us to issue number 16, which picks up right where we left off to issue 15. Only now we got a bunch of like the Hellfire Club's like goons run in to like arrest them or whatever, and then Amara casts like a big light thing, and like there's like an earthquake, and everyone like spooks out of there. And then we find the real Kitty Pryde is sitting in like she's like tied to a chair at like a dinner table, and Emma's still like pestering her, and they go back and forth, and Emma's like drinking and smoking and being all sexy and whatnot, and Kitty's like, oh, they will never, I will be rescued, blah blah blah. And she's wearing like a strange pink costume that she was wearing before. So then the kids, they find a couple female goons, and so they knock them out so that Ileana and Daniel Moonstar can like take over their stuff. And there's some like nonsense about like, oh, Danny, I'm so sad I used my powers to like get these women to like tell us stuff, but like is it right to like steal people's thoughts and use them, and I'm gonna cry. And Ileana's like, hey, shut the fuck up and let's go. And then Amara and Guthrie, they take like an underground passage using her like lava powers, and they just like burst into like this command chamber or whatever, and it looks huge, but it's like just the power. So the whole power goes out, and then Kitty's like, aha, suck it, Emma Frost. And then all the kids are like running out of the school and whatnot, and then we see Amara and Sam, and they're like outside with all the kids trying to like blend in and whatnot. And then Danny and Kitty, it's like they get caught, but they're not really caught because they're wearing costumes, right? So it's like, oh, we're totally good. But then we see like this sketchy like person like walking on the roof right behind them. Meanwhile, Robert, DaCosta, and Rain are headed elsewhere. They're like moving around, and then Robert like opens a door or rips the door off its hinges because he doesn't know how to open doors correctly, and he gets punched right in the face by some big guy. And so then Rain attacks them, and then she beats him up, and then there's this other chick, and they're all wearing these like pink costumes now, right? She does something with like magic because it's like unlucky or something, and then this thing collapses on Rain, and then she picks up like this guy, and at that point Robert like pops back up, and he's like gonna fight them, and he helps Rain, and then this lady uses like a black disc on him, and he's like, oh, my back, and then she's like, tee hee hee, and then the guy who's with him is like, that's fucked up. At that moment, Danny gets like assailed with something, and Ileana's like, oh no, what's wrong? And then Ileana gets grabbed by like this cat person who's hanging on the roof, and then there's this other lady who's got tarot cards, and she does something to summon some sort of demon. Meanwhile, Sam and Amara run into this guy, Empath. He's a real asshole, and he's trying to do something to their brains, and then what's his name? Doug Ramsey runs up, and he's like, Sam, Amara, what's going on here? And at that point, Sam like bashes Empath real hard in the face, and then I think his name's Jetstream or something. He comes flying in, so he's got very similar powers to Cannonball, and then him and Cannonball like go back and forth, and they have like a battle, and Amara's about to help. Empath takes over her like mind again. I don't know why he's called Empath. I'm pretty sure that's his name though. And then she starts firing at Sam, but he's invincible as long as he's doing his thing. But then Jetstream or whatever his name is not, and so he gets hit by Amara's power, and so Cannonball goes to save him, and then they both get blasted, and because like his force shield isn't as strong or whatever, and they crash into the ground, and then Empath's like, ah ha ha ha, and then Cannonball comes flying out and knocks Empath out again, and then Amara comes too. And then Doug runs out, and he's like, oh no, and then Emma's there, and Emma uses her like actual mind powers to make Sam thinking he's seeing some like hot babe from like back in the day when he was back home, and Amara's seeing like her mother, and so everyone's being like tricked, and then Doug is like commanded to go back inside. Meanwhile, Danny is fighting this demon, and then she gets turned into a demon by this like demon card or whatever, and Ileana's like had enough of this cat thing, so she summons her soul blade and like kills the beats the shit out of it, and then she goes to the tarot card lady, and she's fighting that person, and then they're going back and forth, and then Emma Frost rolls in, and Ileana's like, we gotta go, and she grabs Danny, and they both nope out, and then Emma Frost like reams into like tarot or whatever her name is. We wrap up the New Mutants versus the Hellions arc with issue number 17. So now we see a bunch of the Hellions. We start to get their names. We get this one guy, Jetstream or whatever his name is. He punches Empath as they're walking around. Let's see, I think we get all their names here. Boop, 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 boop. No, we don't really know. They're just like yelling at each other, fighting with each other, and then Empath, Jetstream, that is his name, uses his powers on Jetstream to get him to calm down, and then Emma's like, had enough of that shit. She's like, you cut it out right now. Then, I'm trying to see if they got names. So there's Kitty, cat lady. Join the others. Sharon. She calls her Sharon, but she's a girl who transforms into a cat. She's very like cat-like even as a human. And then there's Warpath. I don't know if they call him Warpath here. It's John Proudstar, I think is his name. Tarot is the girl. Tarot's Thoughts. Yeah, so that's the girl who does the tarot cards. The fuck is this guy's name? A few years ago, upset. Blah 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 blah. I don't remember. Wait, best sure. James Proudstar, who's the brother of Thunderbird. So wait, is he one of them's Thunderbird and one of them's Warpath? I think this guy's Warpath in the future. Right now, he's just a member of the Hellions. So that's the brother of the Native American guy who died in Uncanny X-Men like 2. Like all the way back in the day. So meanwhile, while they're having like a little meet and greet with Emma, we see all the rest of the X-Men. Roberto's still got like back agony from that like power fit attack, but Kitty's there, and they're all chit-chatting about what's going on, and Kitty starts giving him like a massage on his back to like help him out. They're talking about calling the X-Men, about being like, it's the whole thing with like Kitty looking down on the New Mutants kind of stuff, and then Emma calls in and is like taunting them with her like hallucination or whatever. Meanwhile, Ileana and Danny like wake up in limbo, and I think they're in limbo. And then Danny wakes up first, and she's like whacking around and trying to do stuff, and then all these monsters are there, and then she uses like her magic on these guys, and they see Sim, and then Sim like actually shows up, and he's like, what up, sweetheart? And then later Ileana wakes up, she's in like some sexy robe, while Danny's in like some Native American garb that's barely covering anything, and Sim's there, and they're just like chit chat, and then Ileana like sends Sim away, and then she starts doing like some magic or whatever, and to heal herself. And Danny gets kind of concerned because it's like a pentagram, but it's like a white pentagram, but it's like an upside down pentagram or something. It's a lot of like nonsense in her head. And I'm like, Native American, what do you even care? And so then they teleport out of there and they end up in this room and they see everybody, like all the Hellions and all the X-Men. They're like super buddy. They're all wearing these pink outfits and having a grand time. And then Danny notices that it's been like a year. And it's like, ruh-roh, that's not supposed to be the case. So we got to like go back. And then Emma like rolls in and she's like, aha, I knew you were here. And then Ileana like teleports them again. And this time it's like winter. So it's only been like a week after the fight. And so she tries calling the X-Men again, but they're still not around. And so they start sneaking around and eventually they find Reign and the rest of them. And they haven't joined forces with the Hellions yet. But while Danny's waking everybody up, the Hellions come rolling in and they're like, surprise! And they got Ileana and they got like chloroform on her face, whatever. And then we get some like Supreme fan service with all the girls wearing like 90s or like other things. It's so good. Excellent. And then they like yell at each other and then there's like challenge time. So they're going to have like a battle. So the battle is like Jetstream versus Cannonball. And if Cannonball wins, they get to go. And if Jetstream wins, then they're going to all go join the Hellions. So they have a fight in like the danger room of the Boston Academy and they go back and forth, and they're flying around and doing stuff. And then let's see, there's like, okay, so kick fight. Yeah, it's like a shonen anime battle, like punch. And finally like Cannonball's like beating up Jetstream and it's like, all right, I give up, you win. And then Emma Frost and Sebastian Shaw, who we all thought was dead or something, shows up and Cannonball's like, you have to let us go. We made an agreement. And Emma Frost is like, I didn't make an agreement. Like none of this counts. And then Jetstream's like, come on, lady. And she's like, no, shut up. And so he goes to attack, Sam goes to attack Shaw, which is a terrible idea because his power is like redirecting kinetic forces. Then Robert changes, and then Danny, and then, Emma like reverses her powers. Robert doesn't learn anything from Cannonball's situation and like punches Shaw. Then Kitty, while that hubbaloo's going on, Kitty like sneaks out of there to like mess up the danger room thing, so it kind of goes off. And with that, everyone starts getting attacked in the danger room and everything's all messed up. And then like Reign and Kitty Cat like make best friends forever, and they grab Sunspot, who got like knocked out. And then they chit-chat about how they can be friends, and they're both like animal people and all that kind of stuff. And then everyone gets dragged together so Ileana can like teleport them out of there. And they end up back in New York. And everyone's like, wow, Limbo was crazy. And they're like, yep, Limbo was crazy. And Ileana's like, I'm tired. And everyone's like, we're all tired. And then as everyone's going inside, Danny gets like kind of scared, especially because she turns around and there's like a ghost bear. And it's like, oh, none can save thee, little Cheyenne, neither God nor man. I will claim you just like I claimed your mother and father. Soon I will come for thee. And that wraps up the New Mutants and Hellion arc. So that was fun. We got to meet the Hellions, and they come around again, and they kind of deal with stuff, right? And they have like friendly teenage banter and all that. So go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.